I'd like to call this meeting to order of the Mayor and Commissioners of the Town of Rising Sun for February 27th, 2024 at 5:37 p.m. Can I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Braun, Commissioner Kleiner,
Here.
Commissioner Pearson, Commissioner Warren.
Here.
Here.
Let the record show you do have a quorum.
Okay. We can all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. I guess we'll have a moment of silence for all those in harm's way, and okay. There's an opening statement here. Is that something
Well,
I need to read?
Basically,
was
what we do is just give an
his-
overview
okay.
of the proceeding.
Got it. Okay. So tonight we're going to have a public hearing. So we've opened a public meeting. We will be effectively suspending the public meeting and opening up a public hearing. We will have the public hearing agenda, which has, I believe, 4 items on it, if that's correct.
Yes.
Once, for each of those items, we will have a citizen's comment and input. So those comments should be germane to whatever the topic is of the public hearing. If you have additional comments that you would like to on other topics, there will be a separate citizens comments section once we leave the public hearing and return to the public meeting. I would, so when you get up to comment, just state your name and whether you're a town resident for the record, and then make your comments for or against whatever, however you feel about the ordinance. And then we will, I believe it's going to be 2 minutes per person?
Yes.
Great.
Yeah, 2 or 3?
3 minutes.
3 minutes, okay. So please try and keep your comments to 3 minutes. And with that, I make a motion, or is there a motion to suspend the Mayor and Commissioners meeting?
Yes, I make a motion to suspend the Mayor and Commissioners meeting for the purpose of opening up a public hearing.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay. And so the public meeting is suspended. Do we have a motion to open the public hearing for staff presentation and public comment?
I make a motion to open the public hearing for staff presentation and public comment.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay. So we are in a public hearing. Ordinance 2024-09 cannabis zoning requirements. Town Administrator, would you like to give an overview?
Yes. Thank you. So what you have here before you, and again, I think it's important to mention that all of these ordinances have been previously submitted to the elected body, and they've all, because they affect zoning, they were also presented to our planning commission for them to have an opportunity to comment on these. Tonight's purpose, as Commissioner Warnick said, is to have a public hearing, give an overview, and then get any kind of public comments that people might have regarding the ordinances. So the first one you have is ordinance number 2024-09. This is an ordinance of the Town of Rising Sun in Cecil County, Maryland, adding language to the town's zoning code to address recommended changes and updates to address recent changes in the Maryland state regulations related to consumption, growing, processing, testing, and dispensing of cannabis, and to repeal any and all other ordinances and parts of ordinances in conflict therewith. So I'm not going to go into reading all of the paragraphs. A lot of it is boilerplate language, but essentially this is talking about the land use article in the third whereas. The land use article empowers the elected body to have a zoning code and to make changes to the zoning code. And whereas the The annotated code was changed a while back to allow for the retail distribution of cannabis in the state. And so this ordinance is, we need to have something in our zoning code to address that basically. So this went before our planning commission for review and comment on January 13th of 2025. They offered some comments on the discussion. This is an ordinance that is regulated by the state of Maryland. And let me preface it by stating that this is one of those types of ordinances that it's easy for people to have contradicting opinions about it. But the town is regulated by what the state says the town can and can't do on it. So it's not a matter of what the elected body prefers. It's not a statement on anybody's opinion about it. It's basically enacting legislation that the state allows us to do within some parameters of which we're able to do them. So in reality, it's a very straightforward ordinance. So the first amendment that we have in the ordinance, and I have it under section 1, is that we have a section called accessory uses. Note 3, we're making a modification to make it clear that a cannabis business can't show up as a home occupation in a residential area. There are always people who want to run home occupation businesses out of their home. Cannabis is not something that you can do out of the home, so we're making that clear. Amendment 2, we're adding a new subnote regarding accessory uses that says, any proposed use regulated by the Maryland Cannabis Administration or is a dispensary shall not be considered as a home occupation and is subject to the design regulations for the specific use delineated in this ordinance. Section 2, now under Article 6 supplemental zone regulations, that's where we had to look at it as a placeholder for cannabis. And so in our zoning code, for instance, and it's germane, that we have specific uses that are called out for alcohol retailers and businesses. So there's a separate use in our code, just like there's a separate use for restaurants and stuff. It sort of gives you more clarity on any regulations. And so we created a new section 12620 titled Cannabis Business, and it basically goes to say a cannabis business shall be permitted in any town zoning district that allows alcoholic retailers or distributors. A cannabis business shall comply with the following performance standards. The use must be set back 500 feet from all public parks, playgrounds, recreation centers, libraries, schools, places of worship, and child or daycare facilities. And again, let me preface this by saying, this is out of the state regulations. The town is not permitted to decrease that or to eliminate it. It's in the state regulations that they can't be located within 500 feet of what you might consider what the state views as sensitive areas, maybe around where children could be at. The other thing that we are permitted to do is the use must be set back 100 feet from all areas zoned for residential use. A use must be set back at least 1/2 mile from all other cannabis dispensaries. So that's just basically saying if we have a cannabis business that comes in and they're located at 123 Jones Street, you can't have another cannabis business open within 1/2 mile of that cannabis, and that is something that's provided for under state law. The other thing here consistent with the town's requirements for licensed alcoholic beverage retailers, the outdoor storage or display of goods is restricted, meaning all sales must be conducted indoors unless a special event permit is secured in advance. I want to give you some clarity on that. The state regulations say that you cannot make the operation of a cannabis business any more burdensome on the operator than you would on an alcohol sale or retail. And in our zoning code, we already have something in there that alcoholic beverage retailers, they're not allowed to have outdoor storage or display of goods. And it goes on to say that all the sales have to take place in the building. However, one thing that we put in here is that when we have Sunfest and things like that, where we close the downtown area, we do allow those liquor establishments to get a short period permit to have like a beer garden on outside. So we're just making it clear that we're complying with the code to not make it any more burdensome than what an alcohol retailer or distributor would be able to do. The other thing that we're acknowledging here is Cecil County does have a regulation that talks about the number of dispensaries that are permitted in a councilmatic district. That may or may not be challenged down the road, but it is a county code that basically says if you have a certain number of legislative districts, you can't have two in one legislative district until you have one in all of the legislative districts. And so if all the legislative districts had one, you can't have three. You can have the second one in another legislative district, but you can't jump to three until all the legislative districts have two. Now that's blowing that out a little bit because the state is regulating how many cannabis dispensaries, the licenses they're willing to give out in a county area, and Cecil County has at this time has been afforded 2 cannabis dispensary licenses in it. So unless the law changes, there aren't going to be any more than 2 in the entire county there. So that explains that. Operation of on-site cannabis consumption establishment is prohibited. The only caveat to that is that the state can issue a license for on-site cannabis consumption, but it's a license that the state has to issue, not us. And right now, the state has not issued any on-site cannabis consumption location. So again, we're just matching what the state law is saying right now. Consumption of cannabis in public places such as parks, streets, sidewalks, or other areas open to the general public is typically prohibited, even for medical card holders. This restriction aligns with federal and state regulations governing public health and smoking. What we're basically saying there, because let's be honest, there's people that are concerned about this. So we need to have ordinances that are being very clear of what the state says and what's beyond the control of the town and what the town can do. And in this particular situation, there have been people in our planning commission, for instance, that express people consuming it on the outside. There are other regulations away from the cannabis regulations that would regulate that. And one of them is you can't do any more with cannabis and smoking it than you can with a pack of cigarettes on it. So it's 2 separate laws, but still come to the middle of answering those questions. So that's what we have in here. The other thing we're doing is we're creating definitions in our zoning code. All of these definitions are what you find in the state regulations. So we're not creating any new definitions. We're following what the state guidelines are regarding those definitions. And then the remaining sections are nothing more than your boilerplate language you have in an ordinance that talks about if any part of the ordinance is found to be illegal, it doesn't throw the entire ordinance out, it only deals with that. So sections 4 through 10 are just boilerplate language regarding ordinances in general. So that concludes basically the overview of this ordinance.
Okay, well, we're gonna open it up to citizens' comments. Again, if you come up to the podium, please state your name and whether you're a town resident
And
for the record.
And spell your last name,
Yeah,
please.
please spell your last name.
Oh. Hi, my name is Craig Siebert, S-E-I, B as in boy, E-R-T. I'm a resident of Rising Sun, live just down the street. I guess town administrator answered one of my questions, which was, is this required by the state of Maryland, which it sounds like it is required by the state of Maryland that we have to have zoning regulations for a cannabis business. My next question is, if a cannabis business wanted to open up in Rising Sun, how much of a say do we as residents get in the opening of that business? Do we get a say of like whether they can do it or not?
Do you want me to address that?
Please address that. Yeah.
All right, so in a zoning code, there are 3 primary mechanisms for somebody to open up a business. One is what is called permitted by right, which means they come in, they apply for the certificate of occupancy. If they meet all these requirements, there's no public meeting or discussion on that because by law it's a use that's permitted for by right. There are other provisions in the zoning code that say a use can be regulated by a special exception or a variance, and you might see when people open up a daycare in town, that's a use that's permitted by special exception, so we advertise hearings for that. But the state law says essentially that because an alcohol distributor is permitted by right in certain zoning districts, that a cannabis business has to be treated the same way. So as long as they are in a zoning district that allows alcohol and it's permitted by right, there won't be any public discussion on that.
Okay.
Unfortunately, that's the way the law is set up.
And I'll
Alright.
pause the timer for you because I know how long Calvin can talk.
Yeah.
That was actually
Okay.
it. Thank you very much,
Thank
guys.
you.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak tonight on this topic? Okay, with that, the public discussion.
Hey, Dave.
Whoa, yeah.
Just wanted to let you guys know that I did join you here. I do have significant concerns in regards to residential regulations. I think all of the board has concerns in regards to how close a facility like this is to a home. But we'll continue, obviously, with state guidelines and move forward with it. So thank you for letting me join you.
Yep. And I assume you would like me to continue.
Please
Yeah, 'cause
continue to
it's
chair.
gonna be
Thank
really
you.
difficult for you to do the public portion of this with being remote, so I'll continue to chair it. Okay. With that, we are closing citizen comment to ordinance 2024-09, and we are moving on to ordinance 2024-10, wetland and environmental buffer standards. Town administrator, do you have a town administrator's report on this?
Yes, I do. This one is a lot simpler, and this comes down to when in our zoning code, we have a language that talks about wetlands and wetland buffers. And the synopsis of this is that in our zoning code, we have provisions that require someone to get a variance from us to disturb a wetlands area or to get within, 100-year stream and the buffers and stuff like that. In reality, those are all regulated by the Army Corps of Engineers and MDE. And so what we have inadvertently seen happen is we create a paradigm like a what comes first, the chicken before the egg. what comes first, the chicken or the egg, in the fact that the Army Corps of Engineers, and I'll give you this example, when the state gets an application for a home occupation, a daycare, a home daycare, they will not entertain that licensee looking to get a daycare until the town says it's permitted in our zoning code. And what we do when the state contacts us is say, yes, it's permitted in our zoning code, but it's permitted with a special exception. And then we address all the variables that have to be in place for a home daycare. Once we do that, then the state picks up the review. So in wetlands and wetland buffers and disturbances, the Army Corps of Engineers and MDE do the same thing. They say, well, we're not going to consider it until the town says it's permissible in their zoning code. But what we've had a tendency to do is when they come in to get the variance from us, we say, well, we're not going to give you the variance until the Army Corps of Engineers says it's okay. And so that just grinds the gears on everything. And it's not really our regulatory purview to do that. And so this is just taking out some of the language that created that, meaning that we're putting it back in the hands of the Army Corps of Engineers and MDE, and if they grant those waivers, then who are we to say, no, we're not going to grant those waivers, because it's not within our jurisdiction. So that, in a nutshell, is what this ordinance is doing.
Okay. With that, is there any citizen comments on ordinance 20-24, or 2024-10, wetland and environmental buffer standards? Okay. Hearing none, I'm closing the citizens' comments on 2024-10, and we're moving on to ordinance 2024-11, intersection safety standards. Town Administrator, do you have a synopsis of that?
Yes, I do. And so this one here is, it really has to do, the best way to summarize it is what are called clear sight triangles. And I'm going to jump to the section of the ordinance so that it will make sense and everybody can see it. So what we're talking about here is when you come to an intersection. Hey, Augie, your background noise is bleeding through.
What?
Your background noise is bleeding through. If you can mute your phone.
Oh, okay, I'll turn it.
So what you see here is on a clear sight triangle here. The idea is when somebody comes to an intersection and wants to pull out, can they clearly see oncoming traffic? And the way our clear sight triangle was previously set up is that everything that was above 2 feet off the ground and less than 10 feet off the ground, that you could see that obstruction for up to 50 feet away from the intersection was a clear sight triangle violation. Now, that gets regulated one of two ways: through your property maintenance code, where somebody calls and says, hey, my neighbor's got this azalea bush that I can't see through, it grew over a period of time. You send the code officer out and you say to the neighbor, hey, that bush is obstructing visual traffic and you can't do that. So that's one way of regulating it. But the other way of regulating it is when you have development taking place. And then when you get corner houses that are built on a corner of a property, an intersection, take any one you want, take Stone Run, Drive in the Bryant's Grace development, or any of our residential neighborhoods. The way our code was written, it would be very hard to have a corner property because the lots are small, and when somebody were to park a car in their driveway, because it's within the 2 and 10 foot threshold and 50 feet away you still can't see it, it makes it so you can't have a corner property. But there's no engineering basis for the 50-foot setback. The common industry standard is a 25-foot setback. that's what the engineering world has said makes sense. And so we just want to clear that language up in this particular code to make that clear. We have two separate codes that reference clear site triangle. One already says 25 and the other one says 50. And so we're just cleaning that up to make it one and the same. So within this ordinance, you're seeing, and I'm going back up here where we are basically, you can see what the other one said. I'll give you an example. Is we added language that said a clear site triangle as defined in this code shall be maintained at any at any corner lot in any zone. And so in here it had language of what that clear site distances were. We're making it sort of uniform by saying that you're going to refer to the definition in our code on what the clear site triangle is. And look, and I don't mean to belabor this, but what we often find is over the years, elected bodies in any town, it's not just Rising Sun, come up with a good idea. And they go into a code and they change one section and they don't realize they missed another section, and it creates a contradiction. So a lot of the work we've been doing over the last 2 or 3 years is to clean up those contradictions. And one of the best ways to do that is to have everything you're trying to define as a definition in one location in the code. And then you just refer back to those codes. You don't try to write new measurements in this case. You just say it has to be maintained as defined in the definition. So that's all. My explanation is longer than the actual code itself, but I want to make sure that you understand what it was we were doing. So we have a definition of what a clear site triangle actually is, and we show a picture. That's what you see up on the screen. So that concludes that summary.
Calvin, the one thing, the federal manual and uniform traffic control devices calls for a triangle of 75 feet from the center line. Are we doing a smaller triangle because of the lower speeds on our streets?
Yes,
Okay.
we're giving ourselves the flexibility to regulate our roads,
Okay.
which we are able to do.
That's just
Obviously, if we had a major road, like if Route 1 ran right through the middle of town, then we'd probably have the
Well, the
75.
federal would apply on Route 1 because it's a federal highway.
Right, but
Yeah,
I'm
I
just,
get you.
but that's the reason why we don't have to worry about the federal regulation, because we
Yes.
don't have any federal roads
Yeah.
in here.
Okay, are there any citizens' comments on ordinance 2024-11 intersection safety standards? Okay, hearing none, that concludes the comments, so closing comments on ordinance 2024-11. Moving on to ordinance 2025-01, comprehensive zoning code updates. Town administrator, do you have a synopsis on this?
Yes, so what this is doing, this is an example of what I just said, where we're going into our code and cleaning some things up. We're not really changing anything in the code, we're just organizing it a lot better. And some of the examples of what we're doing as I read through here, you will see where we have, let me get one here, like right here. Here's an example of under 12-102 intent and authority. We just had these paragraphs that were written here. And you would have to go in and read every paragraph if what you were looking for was how should what's the orderly process of a development? You're sort of like looking for a needle in the haystack, because a lot of our paragraphs don't have a title on what it is you're about to read. So a lot of what we've been doing is putting titles at the beginning. So here's an example here where anyone who looks at this paragraph knows that we're talking about how the comprehensive plan is integrated into our zoning code. So that's an example of we're just adding titles to stuff. And so at the beginning of the document, We are also making modifications to Article 1 to be more in line with state law. And I know, Dave, you're going to love this because it's been around forever. Our zoning code was still referencing
Yeah,
Article 66B in the annotated code. And Article 66B was replaced 10 years ago at least.
Yeah.
And so this is an example where we're going in and just making sure everything is copacetic. We're also going in and we're modifying rules for non-conforming lots. And we're dealing with what happens when a property is non-conforming. And for the people, watching online, it makes sense to sort of talk about what non-conforming is. There is what is called a legal non-conforming use. And a legal non-conforming use is created because our town is well over 160 years old, but zoning codes have only been around since 1974. And so when any town in the country tries to create a zoning code, they're doing their best to basically have an overlay and to lay it over areas that have been around for decades. Well, sometimes those properties don't comply with the zoning code that was overlaid. And you can't have a zoning code that has R1 on this property, R2 on the next property. That's called spot zoning. You want some uniformity to the way your community is laid out. So when they create those zoning codes, they inadvertently create what are called legal non-conforming uses, which means they don't meet the zoning code, and that's okay. However, number one thing they can't do is they can't make a legal non-conforming use more non-conforming, meaning if their building was 5 feet taller than what the zoning code said, they can't come in and say, well, I just want to make it 2 feet more. What's the difference? It's already legally non-conforming. You can't make it more legally non-conforming. And then the zoning code also says that the town has opportunities to bring non-conforming uses into conformity, and one of them is when a property burns down. And so this code revision is addressing that. So let's say you had a building that was built closer to a road than what was permitted, but the building burnt down. Can the property owner build back on that footprint? And what we have said is that if the foundation is structurally sufficient to handle that building, we will allow them to build back on that footprint. But if an engineer comes in and says the footprint, the foundation is not good, they can't dig that footprint out and then build a new footprint on that location. And there's a lot of more in the weeds, like what do you do on a building that's still standing but the interior of the building was gutted? Well, under a normal building permit review, which you guys know we do in-house, even if we didn't have this language, I would be telling anyone who's trying to rehab a big old Victorian that burned out, well, you're going to need to give me a structural engineer's report that says you can build within the 4 walls that are still standing. You can replace some studs, put some drywall in, tear the floor up, but I need to know that the building itself is still structurally sound. So it's the same concept, that if an old Victorian burned out but was still standing, I'm going to make them get a structural engineer's report, which would include the foundation. And if the foundation is good, they can build in place. If it's not, and they have to put a new foundation in, then they have to bring it up to code. And a good example of that, if you've ever gone through Port Deposit, you will see a lot of their buildings that are right on the road, and there's a couple that are set back. For whatever reason, they lost their non-conforming, and Port Deposit had them bring them into conformity. So that's why they're set back in some of those locations. So there's a lot of definitions that have been added in here. There's an adequate public facilities. We've always had an adequate public facilities ordinance, but we wanted to, a lot of times our language is very hard to read. So we've blown it out into subparagraphs. so forth and so on in there. The other thing that we are doing, which is a major undertaking, is it is common for whether you're talking about a building code, a zoning code, a subdivision code, to have definitions located in one of the chapters. And that way, if you're looking for a definition, you go into one location. Whoever did our zoning code back in the 70s had a habit of, well, let's add 10 definitions to chapter 8 regarding street parking. And if you don't know it's there, you're going to go into chapter 23 and say, well, there's no definition on street parking, so we have to figure it out ourselves. And so you have these definitions sprinkled throughout the zoning code. This ordinance is allowing us to lift those definitions and put them in one location. But it's going one step further. All of our town codes are set up for chapter 2 to be the placeholder for all the definitions. The zoning code has them in chapter 23, which is just a little unorthodox. So we're basically saying we're going to take all the existing definitions from chapter 23 and put them into chapter 2 so it's consistent with the way all our other codes operate. And then we're going to lift all the straggler definitions throughout all of the chapters and put them in chapter 20 or in chapter 2. That eliminates unintended consequences of somebody giving an approval and then finding a definition later on that creates a problem. So this is all just an exercise in cleaning up these documents. So that concludes that summary.
Are there any citizens' comments on ordinance 2025-01, the comprehensive zoning code updates? Okay, hearing none, moving on. Elected body deliberation and comments. Is there anybody on the elected body that has any deliberation or comments to bring up? Okay, hearing none. Oh,
I don't have any.
okay. Hearing none, moving on, closing comments from the town attorney. Jay, do you have anything to add to this?
Good evening. No, I don't have anything new to add. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. For the most part, the first couple ordinances, the legal term is preempted. We are preempted by the state to do certain things, so the state tells us what has to happen. You can think liquor stores, gun laws, and cannabis is the other one. So that's pretty straightforward. Same thing with the stormwater and the wetlands preemption there. And Calvin's worked really hard on the other two ordinances, trying to get things to be a little more understandable, a little more workable. So unless you have questions, that's it.
Does anybody have any questions for Jay? Okay. Calvin, thank you for all of that. And do I have a motion to adjourn the public hearing?
I make a motion to adjourn the public hearing.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay. The motion adjourned is completed. A motion to reopen the mayor and commissioners February 27th, 2025 town meeting.
I make a motion to
I
reopen.
make a motion.
Okay.
I knew it was gonna.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Okay. So next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Is there anything anyone would like to remove from the consent agenda? Okay.
No.
Hearing nothing, we'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda for January 14th, 2020, or, I'm sorry, did I get that right?
Just the consent agenda.
Just the
Second.
consent agenda.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Okay. Public presentation, we have none. Moving on to unfinished business. Town administrator, do you have, I guess we're actually making motions. Sorry, I guess it's not
Yeah.
town administrator. So unfinished business ordinance 2024-09. So these are the ordinances we just had a public hearing on. Is there a motion to approve 2024-09 cannabis zoning requirements?
Dave, I am going to recuse myself from voting on this.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve?
I I make a motion to approve the ordinance 2024-09.
Okay, do we have a second? Okay, I will second.
Do you have a quorum now?
Yeah, we do. He's just recusing himself. We can, oh,
Well, Pauline's not here.
we don't, ooh. We don't have enough to, yeah, if
Can the
you,
mayor vote?
yeah, we'll have to,
Yeah.
the mayor can only vote to break a tie.
All right, let the town.
No,
go.
We're gonna
so a
table it.
recusal does not end your quorum, so you still have
Yeah,
three.
but we don't have enough votes. Is the vote based on the number of people in attendance or the total body?
For this type of thing, it's the number of people in attendance.
Okay, thank you.
So you have a quorum even though it's recused, and
Yeah.
so it's.
Yeah, I was thinking more of
You have
the,
to have 2 votes in favor at this point.
okay, that's what I just wanted to make sure of. Okay, so, okay, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so that's 2-0 with one recuse. Okay, ordinance 2024-10, wetlands and environmental buffer standards.
I make a motion to approve ordinance 2024-10.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any comments on 2024-10 wetlands and environmental buffer standards? Okay, with that, all those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, 3-0. Ordinance 2024-11, intersection safety standards. Do we have a motion to approve?
Make a motion.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, do, all those in favor say aye?
Aye.
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 Okay, 3-0. Ordinance 2025-01, comprehensive zoning code updates. Do we have a motion to approve?
Make a motion.
I
And do we have-
second.
Second. Any comment on that?
No comments.
And, okay, with that, do we have, all those in favor say aye?
Aye.
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 Okay, moving on to new business. Resolution 2025-04, town clerk appointment. Town administrator, would you like to give the synopsis on this one?
Yeah, so this is a resolution, and because you can vote on this tonight, if you want, I'll read it in to the record, and you can vote on it. Pretty much the synopsis is in the resolution itself. So I'll skip the boilerplate language. The fourth, whereas the Code of Ordinances of the town contains Chapter 2 titled Administration and Government, which establishes the general guidelines associated with the proper administration of affairs and business for the town of Rising Sun, Maryland, in accordance with the town charter and other applicable federal and state laws. And whereas this chapter contains Article 2 titled Organization of Government, which establishes the various departments and positions that handle the day-to-day administration of the town government under the auspices of the mayor and commissioners. Whereas this article contains Section 2-204 titled Administrative Positions Established, which establishes the responsibilities and duties of the position of clerk for the town of Rising Sun. And whereas this article also contains various subsections that contain the language referencing the town clerk. And whereas the position of town clerk serves as the clerk to the Board of Commissioners and is charged with other duties as spelled out in the town charter, town codes, and town resolutions, to include the duties of recording secretary, document filing, records management, election coordinator, and custodian of the official town seal. And whereas these duties are integral to the legal and legislative process of providing town government. And whereas Judy Melton has been serving as the town clerk since being appointed by the mayor and commissioners on October 23rd, 2018. And whereas Juanita Giles has been assisting Judy Melton with these clerk duties for the past 2 years and has assumed many of the tasks associated with this position under the guidance of Judy Melton. And whereas Judy Melton is currently serving as both the town treasurer and town clerk, as outlined in Chapter 2 of the Town Code, Section 2-201, titled Administrative Departments Created, and whereas the consolidation of two designated positions under a single individual does not align with the spirit of segregation of duties as intended by the town code. And whereas the mayor and commissioners recognize the need to restructure certain staff positions to better align with the town's evolving demographics, community needs, and future priorities. And whereas, and to that end, the mayor wishes to formally assign the responsibilities of clerk to the Board of Commissioners, along with other duties spelled out in the town charter, town codes, and town resolutions, to include the recording secretary, document filing, records management, town election coordinator, and custodian of the official town seal to Juanita Giles. Now therefore be it resolved that the mayor is hereby seeking advice and consent of the Board of Commissioners to approve the reassignment of duties of town clerk to Juanita Giles for the purposes of ensuring a more structured and efficient allocation of responsibilities within town administration. Now therefore be it further resolved that the mayor and commissioners of the town of Rising Sun passed, approved, and adopted this resolution on this 27th day of February 2025. Let me just add one more element to that. I think what gets lost in this is Judy was serving in the position since 2018. We all know what COVID did. And we were not operating under a full staff for a long period of time. Juanita and Kerry didn't start to come on board with the town until the last 2.5 years. And so when you start to think, why did the town, sort of buck the idea of separation of duties? Because we didn't have the bodies to do that. And so now that Judy's done a great job of training Juanita and Kerry, we have the ability to start subrogating out and separating some of these things. So I just wanted people to know we just needed a little bit more time to get people acclimated to the duties before we started making these changes.
Okay.
So.
Thank you, Town Administrator. And with that, Resolution 2025-04, Town Clerk Appointment. Do we have a motion?
I make a motion to approve Resolution 2025-004.
Okay, and do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. All those, I'm sorry, is there any discussion on this? The thing I'd like to say is congratulations,
Yes,
Juanita.
congratulations.
With that, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. So moving on, Resolution 2025-05-A, Annexation Resolution 35 North Hills Drive. Town Administrator, do you have a synopsis on this one?
Yes, so this one here, to remind everybody, although it is a resolution, it is an annexation resolution, so you don't vote on that tonight.
Yeah.
What we have to do is submit it into, and am I correct on that, Jay, right? They don't vote on it, it just gets read into the minutes?
That is correct. It's introduced tonight, and you have to have a hearing, and a bunch of things happen to it tonight,
Right.
in the next couple months.
Yeah, as I was talking, I knew we had to introduce it, I just wasn't sure if just reading it into the minutes was a formal introduction, so thank you for that. So basically what this is a resolution for a property outside of town limits who wants to annex into the town of Rising Sun and is contiguous with the town of Rising Sun. And so this would be introduced tonight, and as the attorney said, there's a series of things that happen. We will submit an annexation plan to the Maui Department of Planning, and we'll also submit it to the county. There's a period in which the state and the county have the ability to respond to this annexation, and we can't hold a public hearing until the expiration of that time. And so we don't know when that public hearing is going to be, because we gotta figure that out once we submit the necessary documents to the county and the state. So there's a lot of boilerplate language in here, but essentially what it is, and I'm gonna go to the plats here, this is 35 North Hills Drive, which is right where Mount Street and Route 1 come together. And so it's not annexing the old gas station on the corner, it's annexing the properties behind it. And they become contiguous because we are annexing State Highway in that section of State Highway in, which is where our water line runs across there through an easement. And that's how it becomes contiguous with the town properties there. So that's what this is and it's the accountant's office up there, Patty Wagner's accounting office. That's what would be annexed into town. Town attorney, did I cover enough for what they need for tonight?
Yo, Jay.
Jay?
So in the resolution here, the resolution basically spells out the meets and bounds, the property was surveyed, so you have all the meets and bounds on the document. That's like reading the ingredients on a can of paint. So I wasn't gonna go in and read
Yes.
that here.
Maybe worse.
You know, I'm letting you know that is all the description of the property, who owns the property, and that they wanna annex into town.
Okay, well, with that, is there any discussion on resolution 2025-05A at this point? I don't believe I have any. Okay, so moving on to resolution 2025-06A, annexation resolution for 551 Joseph Biggs Memorial Highway.
So this is very similar to the other one. It's a resolution that identifies the property owner and the description of how the paint is made here with the meets and bounds in here. It's gonna go through the same process, and this particular property is part of the proposed Knutson Land Development Project. And that is where the town, in the Planning Commission and Board of Appeals process, our code requires multiple entrances into a development based upon the number of homes. And in this particular case, this development actually needs to have 3 entrances into it. There's been some other things that have been done to achieve the 3rd entrance, but the Planning Commission didn't want 2 entrances coming out on the Pierce Road because it was sort of redundant and it sort of defeated the purpose of why you would want to have multiple entrances into a development. For example, tree blocks the road, fire company can't get in, backup of traffic trying to get out onto a road, whatever. And so the way the developer is resolved this is to construct a road that would come out and line up with Montgomery Road on Joseph Biggs Highway. And in order to do that, the one existing property there on the south side of Montgomery Road, 551 Jacob Tome Highway, would be annexed into the town so they can get what they need to put an additional road in there. So that's what this annexation is about, is it's required as part of the land development approval that they got. So again, it'll go through the same thing, we'll put a plan together, send it to the county, receive comments from the county, receive comments from the Department of Planning, advertise a public hearing in the future, and then hold a public hearing the way we did tonight, and to take comment on it.
Did any of the commissioners have any comments or anything on that? Okay, moving on, citizens' input. So, do we have anyone that would like to speak tonight? Okay, hearing none. Staff reports, town administrator.
I don't have any, I've talked enough.
I'm gonna confirm or deny that. Please, chief. Chief, do you have any report?
I do have a brief one, so. Yesterday, we held Coffee with the Cop in conjunction with the Cecil County K-9 unit. It gave us an opportunity to engage with the public and learn what the issues were and are around, the northwestern corner of Cecil County. And I think it went very well. I know we have a lot of positive support, and I hope that it continues. Second, we're hiring. The applicant pool for law enforcement across this country is very low. We suffer, many agencies do, but if you are interested, stop in, we'll get you an application, we'll work you through the process. You don't have to have experience, we'll teach you. But yes, we need applicants, we need police officers. Come on in. Okay, and I have one more topic, but my age is starting to show, so I forgot what it was, and I'll get back to it. That's my report.
Okay. Town Attorney, do you have a report tonight?
I do have something for you tonight. As you know, there are two items. The first one is we are still working through the legal process on 16 Main. The lawsuit has been filed, it's been audited, it's been accepted, and the next stage is for us to do the postings. So you'll see some newspaper ads, you'll see some postings on the property, and we hope that that will be the final administrative hurdle, and then the court will make a ruling. So we are almost there. The other issue, a lot of real estate going on with you all. You have, as you know, in a past closed session, you've authorized some real estate purchases, or at least inquiries. And the one that you talked about most recently is 13 East Cherry Street. And as you know, the town was interested in that property. And so we engaged the services of a real estate agent to make inquiries and make an offer. And that offer was successful, and it was turned into a contract of sale. And so what I need you to do tonight is just ratify the fact that you are going, on behalf of the town, to purchase 13 East Cherry Street for the contract price of $325,000. Settlement is next Thursday. So this is just the formality so I can put it in writing to the title company.
So,
I make a motion.
I second.
we have a motion and a second. Any comments? With that, I will take a
I
vote.
do, Dave, I
Yeah.
do have a comment.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
It's been a long goal of this board to try to gain parking on Main Street and to continue our rebirth of our main. This is yet another addition for us to accomplish our goals. Super excited for this property and the future that's going to come from it. And I thank the board so much for your hard work on it. Thank you. And Jay, thank you.
Mayor. Okay, with that, do I have a motion? Do we have a motion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay.
Great.
So Jay, I think
That's all
you got your authorization from the board.
Thank you. You have a good night.
Thank you, Jay. I appreciate all your hard work on that. And everything else for the town, of course. Assistant Town Administrator, do you have a report?
I do. I would just want to let everyone know that with spring, we do have Public Works out, and they're doing inventories of all the parks and anything needed for repairs. Additionally, they are working on the community center. They're doing some demo painting and getting things kicked off over there. Financially, we're performing really well. Cash flow is good, and we are looking at starting, in your packets, you will have budget versus actual for the year. It is budget time again, as much as a year's passed so quickly, but anyway, we're gonna start working on budget in the month of March, because we do have to get it before the board by mid-June. So all department heads, please start looking at your line items and really deciding what we're gonna be spending money on next year. So, look forward to it. That's it for me.
Okay, thank you. And with that, Mr. Mayor, do you have a report tonight?
Hey guys, my report is pretty brief. I just wanted to say we had a great coffee with the cop. Huge thank you to everyone that came out in coordination with the Cecil County K-9 teams. It's hard to believe that it's been almost 9 years of Coffee with a Cop. It's just a fantastic event. and we really enjoyed talking and meeting other members of the community. Also, since our last meeting, we were honored, Chief and I, to be invited to the State of the State Luncheon, where Sarah DeCourcy, who is a mental health counselor at Rising Sun Middle School, was honored as a special guest there. We thank the governor and the lieutenant governor specifically for inviting Sarah and spotlighting her information, and spotlighting her dedication to the students of Cecil County. You know as well as I do that on behalf of the board, I've continued to send letters to Delmarva Power in regards to their rate increases. I recently sent another one to the Public Service Commission to look again at the recent rate increases. There's an expectation that there will be another rate increase in August, and we're hoping that the Public Service Commission will act and not approve that rate increase, revoke the 2022 rate increases that they did that approved that rate increase. That's basically the end of my report. Super excited for what's going on with our community building and the new addition that we're going to have with more parking as well on Main Street. And I look forward to keeping you guys updated on our board meeting, on our construction project for the deck on the new community building. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And moving on, Commissioner Kleiner, do you have any comments?
I don't have a report.
Okay. Commissioner Pearson, do you have a report?
Yes, I do. It's getting near springtime. Remember, there'll be people on bicycles, kids on bicycles. There will be adults on bicycles, but most importantly, motorcycles will start coming out. Please be aware of the surroundings when you're driving so that we can avoid mishaps with especially the motorcycles. But that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Pearson. I don't have a report for tonight. Everything else is just schedule. So we have Planning Commission meetings, first and third Mondays, unless holiday or special meeting. Upcoming town events, Sunfest is scheduled for Saturday, June 7th. Town Hall will be closed on Friday, April 18th for Good Friday, and Monday, May 26th for Memorial Day. Of course, we have our trash and recycling schedule.
Why does the trash day pickup is on Fridays?
Yeah, that's a good point. So we should probably update the trash and recycling schedule on the town agenda, because that changed quite a while ago. So, thank you, Jane, for pointing that out. With that, is there anything else to come before the board tonight? Okay. Hearing nothing else, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion.
Okay. And a second?
Second.
Okay, hearing a motion and a second, meeting adjourned.